Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach me at david@ien.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also reach Jeff and Anna at ien.com with email the podcast in the subject line. We know you email Anna, not Jeff and I. We know it.
I get some emails. You don't?
I feel hurt.
Sorry.
We're live every Thursday at around 2 p.m., so make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us, get a notification whenever we go live. But before we get started with our first story, or the sponsor, how you doing, Jeff?
Better than average, David. How about you?
Slightly above average.
Slightly above.
Definitely a 5.2 today. It was slightly higher, but then it started raining. Anna, how you doing? Yeah?
Great. Yeah, I was going to say average, but I thought that would bring everybody down. So,
yeah. How's everyone doing? Kind of fine. Get ready for a banging podcast. But before we get into that first story, we have another word from our sponsor. At OEO Energy Solutions, we light your facility. OEO provides commercial and industrial LED lighting solutions and is a specialty supplier of both LED lamps and luminaires. As a leader in plug-and-play technology, OEO has developed the Easy LED lamp, which makes the conversion to LED fast and simple. OEO's direct replacement Easy LED lamps are designed to replace metal halide and high-pressure sodium bulbs. These lamps function with your existing ballasts, so that costly fixture replacement is not required, making your LED upgrade as simple as changing a light bulb. As an added benefit, the Easy LED hybrid technology also works on direct line voltage, providing you ultimate flexibility. OEO's other specialty products include LED fixtures designed for the harshest conditions, including high-temperature manufacturing applications. Whether you're looking for LED lamps, high bay fixtures, office lighting, or outdoor area lighting, OEO has you covered. Contact OEO today for expert guidance on your next lighting project. OEO's knowledgeable team will make sure you have the right light for the right application. For all your lighting needs, visit OEO.com or call 1-800-553-2112. OEO Energy Solutions. Energy savings simplified. And we are back. Just a reminder that this week's episode is brought to you by OEO. OEO's direct replacement Easy LED lamps are designed to replace metal halide and high-pressure sodium bulbs. These lamps function with your existing ballasts, so that costly fixture replacement is not required. Make your LED upgrade as simple as changing a light bulb. Whether you're looking for LED lamps, high bay fixtures, office lighting, or outdoor area lighting, OEO has you covered. OEO Energy Solutions. Energy savings simplified. Our first story this week. Hot sauce maker halts production due to chili pepper color. Hoi Fong Foods, the company that makes sriracha hot chili sauce, recently sent a letter with some pretty bad news to wholesalers. The company is stopping production of its popular hot sauce until September because the red jalapeno peppers it uses to make sriracha are not red enough. The company evaluated its chili supply and determined that, quote, "It is too green to proceed." Production will resume later this summer when the next chili season begins. All orders beginning May 6th have been canceled. It's sad to see a brand like Sriracha suffer, Anna, especially since they were one of the first ones to put a rooster on it.
yes. I didn't think about that, but you're right.
Yeah, you're just like an inherent rallying cry for feather rooster pudding people.
Yeah, that's very exciting. Sriracha has always been a part of my life. Well, since I first tried it, I think I was like 18 years old and have been hooked ever since. But looking at the sriracha sauce that's created by Hoi Fong. Did I have that right?
Yeah.
Foods.
Hoi Fong. Yeah.
Hoi Fong Foods. And then Underwood Ranch, which is their supplier.
Former supplier,
where they kind of got into a dust-up. They both make a very similar-looking sauce. Both companies have been around for a long time. But it made me look back and do a little research on sriracha and why you could just call anything you want sriracha and no one does anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
And according to an article in Food and Wine from a few years back, David Tran, who is the head of Hoi Fong, said that he never bothered to get a trademark on sriracha.
Oh.
Yeah. And he claims that the unrestricted use of the term sriracha has amounted to free advertising for his brand, which doesn't even have a marketing budget.
Okay.
Interesting, right?
Yeah.
And so while its name can be co-opted by competitors, its distinct rooster logo and green cap are kind of the iconic, one-of-a-kind pieces to his brand of sriracha. Anyway, so it obviously leads to the question of, does this strategy pay off long term to not trademark this term? Because when you have a product and the name is freely available, and the likeness is maybe easy for people to miss, I think that red sauce, same size, same name, people get confused.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you hit a snag, you give even your most loyal customers a chance to try a different sauce.
Yeah.
So that seems like not the best. And to be honest, like the other thing that I thought of reading this is like maybe there is no snag.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like I think there's some speculation out there, and rightfully so, that maybe this is a manufactured crisis. For one, the new growing season, as you mentioned, is not very far off.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps if the company were sitting on a fair amount of inventory, this would be one way to solve that problem without having to say it. Secondly, I think you can drum up demand for something when you say that it's potentially going to be unavailable. We know, as we saw this during the pandemic, right? Like Americans love to hoard stuff that they think might become temporarily inaccessible to them. So maybe this is marketing for a company that has no marketing budget. It would make sense that maybe this is just a play, but really hard to know. It just when the article says that other companies in the same space do not have the same problem, that's where I was like, maybe this is a little bit suspect. But
I agree with you in terms of being a little bit suspect. My first reaction was this has got to be manufactured demand, because I remember the first time there was going to be a sriracha shortage, right?
Yeah.
My friend Heather came to me. She was like, they're not going to make sriracha anymore. And I was like, my God, I must go buy some because I can't have it not in my life. And then it very conveniently came back. There have been a couple of just recently, in the last 2 years, there's been two other times. In 2022, after problems with, quote, several spiraling events, including unexpected crop failure from the spring chili harvest, that year, a persistent drought in Mexico hindered irrigation and caused low yields, but that hindered production and availability. Last year, they suffered from decreased production because of a shortage of raw material. And it does seem convenient that these are almost popping up yearly. Again, for somebody without a marketing budget, just kind of very convenient to keep you in the headlines. Yeah. And I wonder if it might be a slippery slope, especially since the kind of very public litigation with Underwood Ranches, which used to be their only supplier, and now they're making their own. And pretty much the only difference is that instead of putting a rooster on it, they put a dragon on it.
They put a dragon on it.
I don't know. It seems like that could catch up to you.
Maybe.
Jeff, do you think it's potentially manufactured demand?
I mean, it could be. I don't have any more insight. I guess I'm going to take it at face value to me, because when you look at the chemistry of it, I guess nobody denies what they're saying in terms of if you use a green pepper, it's going to look different.
Yeah.
And I always am of the mindset of when you're not selling product, you're not making money. So yeah. I guess I didn't immediately go to the conspiracy of they're just sort of drumming up demand or free marketing for it. I think they're popular enough that you wouldn't think it'd be necessary, I guess.
Yeah, like nobody wants to go 4 months without sales, regardless.
But I am also not as adamant or a passionate user of this product. I've never been a big fan, so it doesn't impact me. But in addition to just this one product, they're not making anything. They're not making their other 2 products as well. So they're completely shutting down. So the first thing I actually thought about is if indeed it is this dynamic where they're not going to use the reddest of peppers, kudos to them because they're not sacrificing what's worked for them. They're not going to give their customers an inferior product. They're preserving their quality, which is their brand and their reputation. So I give them credit for that. But what also came to mind immediately is if you're not making stuff, what are the people you employ doing? What are you going to do there? And they have not commented on this at this point. They won't talk to anybody in terms of what's going to happen from a production perspective or what's going to happen with those employees. In the past, they haven't fired anybody.
Yeah,
but
that's good.
If you're not making stuff, you're probably not working there either. I don't think they've got everybody just sweeping floors and just polishing equipment.
They got to print the roosters on those bottles.
Yeah, I don't know. And the other thing too is interesting with his name is Underwood
Ranches. Yeah,
they do produce it, but in much less quantities. And they don't seem interested in getting into the whole wholesale distribution element that Huy Fong Foods has developed.
Okay,
so they are going to continue to do it, but just at a much smaller scale, more of a local brand, I guess you could say. But I think the thing that is evident here is they've got significant supply chain issues. There's no way around that. They can say that they're not making stuff because they don't have it. Well, you don't have it because you didn't forecast and you didn't have the foresight to get it in place.
Well, and sometimes we talk about it on the one side where if you have that whale account like Underwood Ranch has had, like you need to kind of insulate yourself in case that ever went away. But on the other side of that, like same for Huy Fong, like it sounds like they've struggled to replace Underwood Ranches in any serious way. So Stephanie Walker, who's a professor at New Mexico State University, she speculates that Huy Fong's attempts to bring new jalapeno growers into the fold have just not panned out. And I mean, talking about having a major operation with 3 products that are contingent on jalapenos, like kind of want to make sure that that's shored up. Just getting into this a little bit more because the relationship between Huy Fong and Underwood, I found it very interesting. And not, I mean, as salacious as the sriracha business can get, right? So Huy Fong had a solid relationship with Underwood Farms. They were, like I said, the former exclusive supplier, but the companies had a falling out that turned into this legal battle and ultimately resulted in Huy Fong paying $23 million in a settlement to Underwood Farms. Now, like we said, Underwood has begun selling its own sriracha sauce with a dragon on the label using its own now very abundant supply of chili peppers. And it's a crazy legacy that goes back generations of farmers. And it's all because of a $1 million discrepancy. So the manufacturer, this is one of those situations where Huy Fong was kind of prepaying for goods to help them farm, right? Paying the manufacturing costs. The manufacturer said that it overpaid the farm $1 million for these growing costs, and Underwood disagreed, and then there was an incredible falling out. And it is sometimes wild to me that when you look at the current landscape, and it's like now we have 2 competing sriracha powerhouses, all because like of $1 million prepayments that someone got a little upset over. And it's just like, man, if we could have just figured out a more amicable, because it was like Huy Fong sued Underwood, and then Underwood countersued, and then it wound up being this whole mess. It just maybe a good reminder that sometimes when you're in these situations, go to that bargaining table and really talk it out instead of just going scorched earth.
Well, we're going to see this in another story too. I mean, that's one of the sort of the passion and the pain of being a small business is you are so into your product and what you're doing that sometimes it's hard to see past this. I mean, we did a white paper discussion not too long ago too. We were talking about expansion and how do you grow. Yeah. And sometimes it means figuring out how to work around some of those hardships and not putting so much, because you've worked so hard to develop a particular product, not getting hung up on that. Yeah. Where you can still make rational decisions. And in this case, again, the manufacturer's got 3 products, which depends on these peppers. You can see how they would be so passionate about what they're doing. And then you got the farmer who obviously this is his livelihood. So he's going to guard his resources and best interest too. So yeah, tough to put the passion aside sometimes, I guess.
Yeah, Huy Fong just needs to acquire Underwood Farms. There we go. Back to square one. Don't see it happening.
No.
They don't talk enough. All right. Our next most popular story. Florida woman pleads guilty to fake military parts scheme. On May 8th, 2024, a Florida woman pleaded guilty to a scheme to supply critical military components to the Department of Defense. Yuxil Senbal pleaded guilty to 25 felony counts and faces just many, many years in prison. According to the DOJ release, Senbal operated Mason engineering parts, which she used as a front to help a pair of co-conspirators get government contracts. The contracts were for parts on Navy aircraft carriers and submarines, Marine Corps armored vehicles, and Army battle tanks. These components are classified as, quote, critical application items. That means any component failure means that the entire system is inoperable. As part of the ruse, Mason Engineering said it made the parts, but Senbal was actually sourcing them from her co-conspirators in Turkey. After the Confederate components arrived, Mason repackaged them, removed any reference to the foreign country, and laundered hundreds of thousands of dollars back to Turkey. Luckily, the military tested the parts and found out that they were out of spec before they went into aircraft carriers, subs, armored vehicles, and tanks. Jeff, it is odd how many of these stories come up, but at least the components were tested beforehand, which I feel like hasn't happened previously. So they weren't on the subs, armored vehicles, and tanks.
Thank goodness, right?
Yeah.
It's the first thing that went through my mind is how in the world did she get this contract? I understand they were working around and they had a scheme in place, but before they could even put that into action, they had to land the contract. How did you get this job? Now, I understand things have probably gone down or taken down information since this has come out. But if you just do a Google search trying to find this company, you can't.
Yeah.
There's two similar companies that are within this area of Florida, but they are nowhere near component manufacturing or engineering. Mm-hmm. One does stuff for more plumbing and HVAC, and the other is a machine shop. So you can also find very clearly on this one website, which I don't think is that real revolutionary, called BuzzFile, that this is a one-employee manufacturing company that has an annual revenue of $36,000. Isn't somebody at the DoD just typing stuff into the Google box here a little bit?
It's got to be on the new SOPs, right? Step one, Google it.
It's ridiculous, and it's frustrating. But I think where this comes from, again, is the fact that when we look at these military contracts, and they try very hard, to their credit, and this is the only thing I can think of, to also try to achieve a level of 5% of contracts going to small businesses that are owned by women. Mm-hmm. So you feel like this just got overlooked in the rush to sort of meet a quota, for lack of a better term or process. I mean, that's the only thing that I can rationalize here, which is a shame because then it potentially puts a cloud over any other small business owned by women, which is ridiculous. You can't loop them together, but that's the only way you could see this kind of happening. Like, how in the world, how else does this fall through the cracks? It's not like you're ordering toilet paper here. I mean, these are things going into submarines and very, very important pieces of equipment where people's lives are at stake. So it blows me away that this happened to begin with. Like you alluded to, thank God it didn't actually get into place.
Well, it's not toilet paper, but I feel like it's a similar procurement process in terms of bidding, right? It's a form. People fill out that they are capable of doing it. They check all the right boxes. And then, depending on the due diligence on the military's standpoint, they either win the contract or they don't.
But it's more than that, because if you do some research into why these types of businesses, specifically women-owned businesses, struggle greatly to get these types of contracts. And a lot of it is because the process is super intensive and because you're supposed to have to demonstrate an understanding of this market and of this technical elements that you're designing products for. A Google search would have told you that this woman did not have that.
Yeah.
So it's just infuriating that it would even get to this point. And then you see all of the agencies that were actually involved in this, from the FBI to Homeland to the DOJ, everyone, that it took to figure this out and put it away. Now, thankfully it did, but man, we're better than this.
Yeah.
Come on.
And that definitely has to be why they threw the book at her, right?
Well, she lied every step of the way.
Oh, I know. She did, but it was in terms of the jail time that or prison time that she is facing, it is significant. So, Anna, we often talk about that a lot, about how after we get to, okay, everyone's already been had, how do we make an example out of this person. I think that they're going not out of their way, but they're definitely looking to make an example of what is her name? Yüksel Senbol.
Yüksel.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. She's facing, I think they said, hundreds of years behind bars for the scheme, which is pretty staggering to think about. And, looking at it from maybe a little bit more nuanced perspective, I don't know. I know she took an egregious risk here and was fully involved in facilitating this scheme. But part of me feels a little bit bad for this woman who is living in Orlando, like doing hair for a living, becomes the front person for the scheme, while the two parties actually manufacturing the parts are safely in Turkey hiding out.
Yeah, still on the lam.
Yeah, and when you consider that one of them had been, debarred from contracting with the U.S. because he did this already, a scheme described as nearly identical in the same part of the country, same exact thing. I don't know. To me, it's like when you look at her role in this, I'm getting more of a Fall Guy vibe than a mastermind vibe. But still, like her terrible decisions are going to cost her big time, as you alluded to. So, yeah, not the best choice. But yes, by and large, I agree with you, Jeff. The concerning part to me, too, was it felt like the process relied on a lot of self-reported data, like a lot of taking someone's word for it. And she's signing these documents, attesting to her abilities, attesting to, agreeing to confidentiality on these very sensitive documents. But, yeah, when you look back just basically, I mean, the company's founded in 2019. And it's not, it was not clear to me in the press release whether the tests uncovered that the components were not up to snuff and that's when they started to investigate.
Yeah.
Or if it was triggered in some other way. But you would hate to think that it just sort of accidentally they realized that this was a completely corrupt entity doing like QA tests way at that's the very last thing, right? So like, I agree. I mean, I think like there has to be more due diligence in this process than just having somebody sign a document saying like, I swear I'm not going to do this. That's not enough.
No, that was the vibe. That was the vibe that I got. And it was also really that the components arrived, they were tested, and that's what triggered the investigation. That was my understanding of it. But you're right. Like, according to Jeff, this person did just like a shade more effort than all the COVID fraudsters out there, that they were only a company on paper. But I didn't really think of the Fall Guy angle. But that makes so much more sense that essentially they found a patsy to put their everything in her name in, and she's going to kind of go down for it. Pulling from the DOJ, the fraudsters used this software that allowed the Turks to remotely control her computer, which evaded security restrictions that limited access to these sensitive military drawings to computers within the United States. That also seemed like something that there should be some sort of check and balance in place, that's not possible, There
were opportunities to catch this at so many different places, and for some reason, it was just completely overlooked.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of mind-blowing.
Well, and they also, so she had to sign multiple agreements promising to safeguard the drawings from unlawful access or export, had clear warnings on the face of each drawing that it could not be exported without obtaining a license. And it's just, there can only be I guess to me, there were just so many opportunities for her to be like, you know what, this is clearly not the right thing. But maybe to your point, Anna, maybe she wasn't even doing this. Maybe like as the fall person, the Confederates were doing all of this kind of not behind her back with her knowledge, but, doing all the paperwork just because he has a track record.
He's got experience.
Yeah.
She was still the face. I do not feel any compassion at all for this woman.
That's shocking, Jeff. All right. Well, our next most popular story. Tesla is rehiring Supercharger staff. It was a surprising turn of events. 2 weeks ago, Tesla CEO Elon Musk raised questions and worried automakers when he laid off Tesla's Supercharger team. About 500 people doing the design, development, and maintenance of the automaker's charging network gone. And then, according to Bloomberg, the company started bringing many of them back, most notably Max Max DeZager, Tesla's director of charging for North America. While it is still unknown how many former colleagues will return, it could alleviate concerns from industry stakeholders who are puzzled by the layoffs. On X, Musk's social media platform, the Tesla CEO announced a more than $500 million investment to expand the Supercharger network. Musk says that the funds are going to be used for new sites and expansions, including thousands of new chargers in 2024. The total doesn't include operational costs. On the same day, the Tesla Charging X account thanked charger site hosts and suppliers for their patience during the company's internal restructuring. At first, Anna, we wondered why the entire team was sent packing. But we then found out that it happened as a predictable reason that has recently come to light.
Yeah, so there's been some reports since this story first broke about what actually happened here. And obviously, yes, it was a very perplexing scenario. There's a lot of people in the industry, in the EV market, that are like, what is he doing here? And it sounds like it was a little bit less strategic than, than he would like the world to believe. So what the reports have suggested, I think it was actually Reuters who first reported this, but they are suggesting, based on their sources, that this move was a little more than a hot reaction to some internal conflict that was taking place at the executive level. So Reuters said that sources were saying that Elon Musk threw the baby out with the bathwater, essentially, when he tried to get the charging division leader, Rebecca Tanucci, to cut more jobs from her team. So she said she had already laid off something like 15 to 20% of the Supercharger team. He wanted more. She said no. Mm-hmm. And to show everyone who's boss, Elon Musk reportedly fired her and her entire team based on that.
Yeah.
Now, if this was truly an exercise in proving a point because you are too thin-skinned to be a leader, then you have no place as a chief executive in a company. To me, this is borderline incompetent. And if it's truly the case that this entire division was removed based on a person's pushback, then he can't do his job. I mean, the reports had added that Tesla, in response to the team shutting down, Tesla moved people over from its solar energy division.
Yeah, the energy team took over.
Yeah, to like take over managing the chargers, the accounts, the new projects. The feedback on that was that these people didn't know anything about charging. They were like, generator and solar people. Not to mention they were taking this stuff on in addition to what they were already doing. Mm-hmm. And, to me, I'd say further evidence of this poor decision-making is the suggestion that Tesla is going to scale back on being an EV maker and focus more on autonomous vehicle technology, which is basically what he said 2 weeks ago. Mm-hmm. If that transpires, in my opinion, we can see a lot more knee-jerk, hot-headed, reactionary business decisions from Elon Musk, because this is not a strategic decision that is going to pay off in the near term. It's going to assume that Tesla's shareholders can take a lot more pain because it's not a profitable enterprise in the next couple of years. We know that. It's very cost-intensive. These shareholders have experienced a massive decline in their holdings in the last year and a half. Do they have the appetite for a long game of very volatile, potential money-losing quarters, one after another? I just think it puts a lot of pressure on Tesla and then on Elon Musk as well. That will only mount. I think we would see more layoffs, more capricious cuts. I just don't think that he is setting himself up for success.
Yeah.
And I think that, if I were a person with skills in this segment, I would run far, far away from Tesla. And my guess is, even as he tries to rehire some of these people in the Supercharger division, they're going to have their other hand on the mouse looking for another job. And I don't blame them for that. I would be looking for an exit strategy as well, because I think that he is not suited for this role. And if that's the person in charge of your livelihood and making those decisions, he's not making the right decisions.
He's in charge of so many people's livelihood. But does Tesla or the shareholders, does anybody other than Elon Musk really have any chance of making any change just with the sham board?
The sham board? At some point, Tesla's not selling enough vehicles right now to make the kind of returns that the company shareholders want. If they continue down the path of saying like we're not going to sell more cars, we're going to keep working on autonomous tech, like that is a long haul. I just don't see like people being like, okay, yeah, we'll wait it out, no problem. We'll sit on the stock for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years and just kind of see what happens.
Yeah, and that's when you get a product. That's not when you're able to even sell it.
Exactly.
At scale.
So, Jeff, when I first heard this news, I thought it was one of two things, right? I thought it was either a spite move or I thought it was union busting. But it turns out that it was just petulant anger.
Yeah. So I'm going to go this route with this story. First, let me ask you this. Either one of you can answer this. Is Tesla still a startup?
No.
No, they're not.
I would say they're not still a startup, but they're still kind of run as a startup.
Okay, fair, which is wrong. In my opinion, they're not anymore, right? They're supposed to be competing with all of the other automakers in this EV field. So if you are going into this field and you're a promising engineering student, you're coming out of school, and you've got an option of working at, I'm just going to call it Company X right now. Company X has lost 30% of their stock market value in the last year. They've just gotten done reducing their workforce by 20%. They're going to sell fewer vehicles this year, or on pace to sell fewer vehicles this year than they have in the last 2. You can either go there or you can go to Ford. Mm-hmm. Who's more promising right now? What's a more appealing job?
Well, I'll actually, similar to last week, I'd like to counter your question with a question. Is it cool to work at Tesla anymore?
How can it be? You just saw evidence of a guy who fired 500 people and put the careers and livelihoods of thousands of additional people who support your product at risk because he got pissed off in a board meeting.
Yeah.
Or not a board meeting.
Private meeting.
A meeting with basically your head of this very important section of your company.
Yeah.
I mean, how is Tesla going to compete simply from a talent perspective with this type of stuff in the mainstream? This isn't behind closed doors anymore. And this is where, again, you're saying it's run like a startup. Right. You're not in startup mode anymore, man. You're not being forgiven for these things. There's expectations and accountability that he just does not want to embrace or accept or deal with. And it's already starting to come to fruition in terms of the SEC stuff, in terms of the NHTSA recalls, where he's got a better way of doing it, so just get out of the way.
Yeah.
This isn't working. And when you look at the legacy of some of these bigger companies when they started turning around, Ford being one of them, what did Ford do? They got a family member out of that CEO position and they brought somebody in who knew how to run a business. Okay? That's what has to happen here for Tesla. They're at a very critical point. Now, I don't know how you do that because I think Musk still owns 60-something% of the stock at this company,
yeah,
I want to say.
I'm not sure.
Something like that. So he's still the majority owner, but there has to be something to happen here to get the direction of this ship righted, because if you don't soon, they're going to continue to lose market share. And pretty soon, they're going to be basically hoping on all of this future tech to really drive things. And in the meantime, everybody else is going to eat their lunch. Yeah. And Tesla is going to become, DeLorean.
Yeah. Well, and I'll ask you, is it cool to work for Tesla anymore? Because to me, I think that the millennial generation, our generation, might be the last that's willing to, make a lot of sacrifices at the workplace in order for very few carrots, right? It seems like Gen Z is much more aware of, are making choices more based on emotion, more based on this quality of a greater good. And I could see if not millennials, you still got millennials that want to work for Tesla, but I could see Gen Z engineers coming out and just being like, that's a strong pass. That is a toxic work environment that we don't want to work for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I do think I'll put maybe a better shine on it because I don't think it's making decisions with emotions. I think the younger generation does a really good job of recognizing their worth, that you got one life and you got, you're giving a lot to a workplace, right? So do they deserve what
more about work-life balance.
Yeah, work-life balance and how important that is. And maybe that does come into play. I don't know. I don't know what the young engineering talent of America, where they want to be. I could imagine being in, Fremont, California or Austin, Texas is maybe better than being in Detroit. I don't know. It depends on your vision there.
Yeah.
But, me as a older millennial with children, this does not seem like it's very consistent work environment.
Well, it's not going to, I don't think that talent's going to, it's the talent that Tesla recruited when they were a true startup. And they're not going to go to Tesla or Ford. They're going to go to Fisker 3.0 or whatever the next like EV startup is.
Well,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we have a company that is, I'm not going to name names or sectors. It's just a tech company that I think we're all well aware of, that the reputation is that they kind of chew up young talent and they work them really, really hard. Mm-hmm. And you see a lot of people doing it anyway for a couple of years when they're young to get the experience and the resume boost, and then they get out of there.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that.
No, that could be just to have that as a line item on the resume. A couple of other points that I wanted to pull out of here, especially from the Reuters report about that $500 million that he posted regarding the investment on X. Two sources at Reuters actually described that expansion budget that he had posted as a big win as an actual reduction of Tesla's original 2024 plans. It also referenced a letter that a global supply manager at Tesla sent to Supercharger suppliers and contractors telling them to, quote, please hold on breaking ground on any newly awarded construction projects and stop materials purchases. So it's still not really good. Like, it's still not good at all. And a lot of people are up in the air. And I think that we're seeing this transition of people who enjoyed this sort of, let's just say, scattered behavior from the heads of these companies to maybe it's becoming a little bit more of like a giant red flag that might start keeping people at bay. I don't know.
You mean keeping people at bay in terms of jumping on the bandwagon with Tesla or feeling the same excitement?
Yeah, or just having any faith in him as a leader of a company.
I think if you have your eyes and ears open, it has to.
Yeah.
Like, there has to be a lot more question marks than there was even a year ago or 2 years ago. I do want to correct myself. Musk is still the majority owner. He has the most stock. His ownership is 20% of that company.
Oh, okay.
So I was way off.
Okay.
But the next biggest is 7%, so he is still in the driver's seat.
Biggest voting block in that, yeah.
Okay. Well, our next most popular story. Chinese EV called the Seagull poses big threat to the U.S. auto industry. The Seagull is a small, low-priced electric car launched last year by Chinese automaker BYD. In China, it sells for $12,000. A shorter range version costs under $10,000. Not dollars, obviously. Unlike low-cost options, it drives well and is made as well as any U.S.-made EV. The rapid rollout of cheap Chinese EVs could have a massive impact on the global auto industry. Tariffs on Chinese goods might keep the Seagull at bay for the moment, but it has politicians and manufacturers uneasy and watching it close as a serious threat. Anna, BYD stands for Build Your Dreams. But as the AP says, this could be a nightmare for the U.S. auto industry.
So dramatic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Had to lean into it.
Yeah, I mean, of course it's something that everyone should be watching. But I do think that this was maybe blown up a little bit beyond what the real implications are, in my opinion. I think the real threat of this cools a little bit when you add the cost to the cost model with some realities that we're facing, right? The new tariffs that Biden has handed down, moving the tariff rate from like 27% to 100%.
Yeah.
When you consider that shipping costs to South America, where they sell currently, bring these $12,000 vehicles to $20,000, assuming that's similar, tack on the safety revisions that they would require to fit the codes in the U.S. market, another couple $1,000s. And then you're looking at a price point, all of those things combined, that is kind of close to what you can already get here for a vehicle of that size.
Yeah.
And to me, that's such an important emphasis. So like, if you look at what's on the market now, the 2024 Nissan Leaf starts at $29,000. Mini Cooper's got a 2025 EV that's going to start at $31,800. Even Volvo is pulling out an EV in 25 that kicks off at $36,000. These are brand new cars. They start below the average vehicle price despite being all electric. Does Biden compete with Rivian on price? No, of course not, because they're completely different products. Like, so there are tons of really expensive EVs, just as there are tons of very expensive ICE vehicles, but there are a lot of cheap options right now. And so I think that, I get it that these EVs are viable, but if you look at like Bide's SUV that they make is selling in Europe for $50,000.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, okay, like that's comparable to what you get here. I just don't think that we can extrapolate that what they sell for in China is what they would sell them for here. I just don't think that's reality. Do I think that American auto OEMs need to focus on price as well? Of course I do. But I kind of think they're already doing that. And, there's plenty on the market right now that's price comparable or less than ICE vehicles, especially when you add in this tax credit that the Biden administration has kind of loosened up a little bit. So I don't know. I think the bigger problem for automakers right now with EVs is the depreciation problem that they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Because, as the technology develops at such a rapid pace, I know that anecdotally there's people that they're like underwater on their loans like a year or two in, because the next model you tack on 40 miles to the range, or you add, all these the bigger batteries and the other benefits. And then, so to me, that's, I think, where people get hung up a little bit on being nervous about the price is like, am I going to pay a premium for something and then lose all that within the first year or two because of the technology changing so fast? You don't really get that dynamic with ICE vehicles. Mm-hmm. But that's just, that's just something that comes along with a new technology. So I don't know. To me, I feel like democratizing EVs is important. I think that automakers are doing that. I think that, it's a tough hand to be dealt when you're dealing with this emerging technology and trying to make it, a good business case for the buyer. But I think they're getting there.
So is the uproar over the Seagull EV mostly political theater?
I don't know if it's political theater. I think that $10,000, $12,000 price point gets a lot of attention, but that's not the real price. Like when you really add on, like what comes along with it, that's not selling for that here.
Jeff, when I pulled this quote from this specific person, let's just say the news cycle has changed a few things on, the way people might think about this guy. But Tesla CEO Elon Musk recently said that Chinese EVs are so good that without trade barriers, quote, they will pretty much demolish most other car companies in the world. Between that, do you think that's possible?
Demolish?
I don't know. We'll tone it down a little bit. Maybe not demolish, just, really be a fly in the ointment for other car companies in the world.
Yeah, and I think that's good. Yeah. That's a positive thing. Now, first of all, when I look at this article, I was kind of disappointed in the tone of it overall. And I was especially disappointed when I saw that it was Tom Kreischer and Paul Weissman. Those are two AP guys who know the automotive sector extremely well. And 99% of the time, I think they crush it. I think they missed it on this one. I really do. Because I think they oversimplified a lot of different factors here. Again, Anna alluded to focusing on that $12,000 price point. That's not real, okay? And they talk about this almost being a foregone conclusion, or at least some of the analysts that they interviewed in here saying, BYD's coming. Man, that is still a big if to me, because this is a completely different marketplace with a ton more competition. So if BYD wants to come over here, great. But they've got to build a network dealership. They've got to build a dealership network. They've got to figure out, they're also not just bringing over the vehicles, but the repair information. They've got to have places to make sure that they can charge these vehicles at. There's a lot more involved than just setting up 4 walls and selling cars, okay? Or an e-commerce site or whatever you want to say. There's a lot more to it than that. And if it is, when you look at this vehicle, there's a lot of individuals who see this vehicle, even though it's got the range on it is solid. It's not spectacular. It's good. I think it's 265. Is that what I saw?
Yeah, that sounds right.
But it's a smaller vehicle. It's got a top speed of 80 miles an hour. Okay, so there's going to be people who look at this and just go, no, no, I'm not interested. I want something more. Plus, it's a sedan-ish type of vehicle. What's the trend right now? Everybody wants their CUV and SUV. So there's a lot of other factors to take into consideration. Anna already mentioned the fact that all the other automakers are catching up. They're getting better. They're working on the price point because all of those other things are coming down because we're getting better at it.
Yeah.
And we'll continue to get better at it. So I was disappointed in some of that sort of language within the article because I don't think that's accurate. The other thing I would say, though, when they talk about these tariffs, if I was part of the Biden administration, this 100 to 102% tariff they're looking at putting on these EVs, I think that's a big mistake. What I would do is I would make it, and if that ends up being the number, to make it markedly competitive, to put it on an even playing field, okay. But that's what the tariff should be. Whatever this vehicle is, put the tariff on so it brings that price up so it's at a competitive level. Not higher than, not lower than, but on the same. Because if it's built better, that's going to make everybody better. Because at the end of the day, the reason that the government got involved in all this EV infrastructure and pushing electric vehicles is because we want to get away from fossil fuels. We want a cleaner environment. We want to run better, okay? The only way we're going to get better is if there's somebody pushing us. And that is true no matter what the dynamic is, no matter where the market lies. We need somebody who's got better ideas to push everybody else along. So I would welcome them into the marketplace. Are they going to take market share? Potentially. But in the long run, everyone is going to be in a better place because of it.
Yeah, right now they would take market share from, a very suppressed EV market. That's, to call it a sedan is, it's a baby sedan.
It's a small vehicle. That was the other thing that kind of bothered me. They mentioned in the article how EVs have been gentrified or they're focused on a niche economic demographic. Not the case. I don't agree with that at all.
Well, it also came out, news also came out this week that I found particularly interesting, where basically the Biden administration said, and if you're thinking of going to Mexico to make these things to skirt tariffs, we'll get you there too. And I'm just like, all right, everyone, calm down. We're getting close to November. We get it.
To get back to what you asked, Anna, though, was this overly politicized? 100%.
All right. Well, hey, President Biden sees targeted tariffs as a needed way to defend key industries and workers. That's all he's doing here.
Fair enough.
All right, our next most popular story. NASA's Starliner launch facing disaster, Contractor warns. The initial launch for Boeing's Starliner was scrapped last week due to a leaky valve. As NASA anticipates another attempt, a contractor has publicly asked the agency to reconsider the launch, which they warned could end in catastrophe. ValveTech, which makes and designs valves, says in a statement that the second attempt could result in a disaster on the launch pad. ValveTech's president, Aaron Favell, urged NASA to redouble safety checks and re-examine safety protocols to make sure the Starliner is safe before something catastrophic happens to the astronauts or the people on the ground. The Starliner will be Boeing's first human spaceflight. ValveTech originally worked with Aerojet Rocketdyne on valve designs for the Starliner's propulsion system, but disputes led to the two companies to part ways in 2017. According to Payload, ValveTech later sued Rocketdyne, accusing the company of misappropriating its trade secrets. ValveTech was awarded $850,000 in damages, but its attempts to get further restrictions imposed on Rocketdyne died in court. Anna, is ValveTech simply a salty ex-supplier?
I don't think so. ValveTech still is very much involved in this industry. They still have contracts with NASA. They're not just sitting in, they're not completely jettisoned from this industry. So that doesn't make sense to me. However, the comments and the issuing a press release, that also didn't make sense to me. Tori Bruno, the president and CEO of the United Launch Alliance, actually addressed ValveTech president Aaron Favell's comments directly on Twitter, X, saying, quote, "Not sure what to say about this one. Close to none of it is correct. Not urgent, not leaking. Remarkable that the person quoted doesn't seem to know how this type of valve works." A ULA spokesperson later added that, quote, "The concerns raised by ValveTech in relation to the crew flight test mission are not applicable to the pressure regulation valve with off nominal performance during the first launch attempt." So unfortunately for ValveTech, this isn't getting the kind of response that they'd hoped for, which it was questionable to begin with. To urgently tell NASA and ULA to basically be safe is not such a stretch, and perhaps is more about getting their name out there as an expert in this field. That's the way I took it. Unfortunately, Tori Bruno's comments actually call that expertise into question. So maybe not much of a net gain here. I don't know. I feel like the response to it kind of watered it down a little bit and kind of make them look foolish. And me not being an aerospace valve expert, it's hard to take it as at face value, I guess. But yeah, the whole thing was very confusing and seemed like maybe Valve Tech stepped out of their lane a little bit there.
Well, for me, part of it was I don't think, no matter what, the immediate reaction shouldn't just be like, well, that's a good way to lose a contract or future contracts. But I mean, I get it. Hopefully there is some sincerity there in terms of there being a real safety issue. But I don't know. I looked at the payload report, and they said specifically the loser of a court battle over valve designs went scorched earth this week, and it just felt like scorched earth. Where they do have other work, but I don't know. I think a lot is at stake here in terms of what Valve Tech could lose. But who knows? Maybe they'll come out, Jeff. Maybe they'll come out looking like a whistleblower.
Well, first of all, I think what we need to remember is for this to be caught before the launch, this shows everything's working. This is what all of those things are supposed to do. Now, ideally, the valve would not have been at its end of life cycle and need to be replaced. But good. Mm-hmm. I mean, good. They caught it. They'll fix it and move forward. So I saw more positive than negative for ULA in this whole story. Looking at Aaron Faville's page here on Valve Tech's website, I think you get a little bit of insight into her perspective. And I'm not trying to bash, because I think there is a tendency when you do lose a battle like that. To me, this must have been really rough in terms of this court battle and whatever they dealt with and who was right and wrong. That relationship is obviously over, and I think it left Valve Tech, which is a little bit smaller company, which didn't have the backing of a company like Boeing, feeling pretty hurt. If you just read, this is just from her page, and there's a lot of this language just in her sort of profile where she talks about things. And one of the sentences that caught my eye is right at the top. It says, "I still wonder if a mystical power will come down from above and make things easier for me and for Valve Tech." And there's a lot of things in her sort of, her paragraph here where she's talking about things. She talks about pushing the boulder up the hill, and things are a struggle. And we're going to continue to work because we're so passionate and we love this business and committed to doing what we want to do. I can appreciate the passion, but man, if you're looking at your day-to-day as constantly pushing the boulder up the hill, as opposed to taking this platform to maybe celebrate a little bit more of your successes and what you have accomplished and what you have done. She even mentions aerospace specifically. Was it a mistake going into the aerospace market? Absolutely not. We're committed to it. We're going to continue to do well. I think there's still a lot of hard feelings. I could see with a company maybe the size of Valve Tech, this was a huge investment for them to get involved with a company like Rocketdyne and getting into aerospace more than they were in the past, even if it was the right move. So I think they saw an opportunity to potentially put themselves out there, not really appreciating the tone of their message.
Okay.
And I think it emanates from the fact that there is still some, not hurt feelings, but still some animosity towards what they experienced there. And it just comes through here as well as in her comments. And I don't think that's the face you want for your company.
So do you think it is more whistleblower rather than only because, at some point, they did win $850,000 as part of a settlement with Aerojet Rocketdyne. They did win.
Yeah. They won, but that type of money can go real fast when you're developing new products for aerospace and military applications. So that probably is also maybe a sore spot whenever that's brought up, because I'm sure they were probably looking for more. Look at the time and effort and resources that go into a lawsuit like that. I think there is still some bitterness here in looking at this situation. I don't think she was trying to whistleblow. I don't think that was the case. It was more just they picked us. We were there and we got kicked out, and this sucks. So you better make sure you like who you're working with. That type of thing.
Well, Anna, to Jeff's point, if they did probably undergo a lot of expense to be able to work in the aerospace industry, I don't think you want to go making quotes or, making so much press this way if you want to still do business in the aerospace industry.
Yeah, it was a calculated risk, and I don't think it was well executed.
Yeah. A Boeing spokesperson said the valves, quote, meet all NASA and Boeing requirements. It is also important to remember that they also pushed back the Starliner due to a small helium leak traced to a flange on a single reaction control system thruster. I don't know. There's just a lot at stake with the Starliner launch, and we didn't even kind of start scratching the surface of that just because around the valve controversy. But I think everyone's really watching this closely to see how the Starliner performs. If it does actually go through it, we'll see what happens. They're shooting for May 21st now. We'll see if it gets pushed back again. I don't know. The world's kind of watching on this one.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Now, before, in case you missed it, the stories that weren't as popular on our website but still stand to make a big impact on the industry going forward, we have another word from our sponsor, OEO. At OEO Energy Solutions, we light your facility. OEO provides commercial and industrial LED lighting solutions and is a specialty supplier of both LED lamps and luminaires. As a leader in plug-and-play technology, OEO has developed the Easy LED lamp, which makes the conversion to LED fast and simple. OEO's direct replacement Easy LED lamps are designed to replace metal halide and high-pressure sodium bulbs. These lamps function with your existing ballasts, so that costly fixture replacement is not required, making your LED upgrade as simple as changing a light bulb. As an added benefit, the Easy LED hybrid technology also works on direct line voltage, providing you ultimate flexibility. OEO's other specialty products include LED fixtures designed for the harshest conditions, including high-temperature manufacturing applications. Whether you're looking for LED lamps, high bay fixtures, office lighting, or outdoor area lighting, OEO has you covered. Contact OEO today for expert guidance on your next lighting project. OEO's knowledgeable team will make sure you have the right light for the right application. For all your lighting needs, visit OEO.com or call 1-800-553-2112. OEO Energy Solutions. Energy savings simplified. Hey, we're back. This week's episode brought to you by OEO. OEO's direct replacement Easy LED lamps are designed to replace metal halide and high-pressure sodium bulbs. These lamps function with your existing ballasts, so that costly fixture replacement is not required, making your LED upgrade as simple as
changing a light bulb.
Yes! Whether you're looking for LED lamps, high bay fixtures, office lighting, or outdoor area lighting, OEO has you covered. OEO Energy Solutions, energy savings simplified. In case you missed it, story's not as popular on the website, but could make a big impact on the industry going forward. Anna, what do you have for us this week?
The story I selected is titled Smart Contact Lenses Could Enable Wireless Glaucoma Detection.
Yeah.
Because that's the world we live in.
Oh, this one's wild.
I know. So, according to the story, most people with early stage glaucoma don't know that they have it, even though early treatment is key to reducing vision loss. So while detecting a subtle increase in eye pressure helps doctors to diagnose glaucoma, it's challenging to monitor that continuously, especially with a variety of temperatures that eyes experience. Researchers in ACS Applied Materials and Interfaces report a prototype smart contact lens that measures eye pressure accurately regardless of temperature. So it says that about 3 million people in the U.S. have glaucoma, which is a group of diseases that damage the optic nerve and nerd. The optic nerd.
Goes right after the optic nerd.
Damage the optic nerve and lead to vision loss, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. So you guys have maybe experienced the air puff thing at the eye doctor. That's what they do to take measurements of eye pressure. The key being not only are these people getting, regular eye exams, like that needs to be taking place, but are they getting them with enough time to apply the treatment measures in order to mitigate the worst effects of this? So for these, in the test of the prototype, the contact lenses, which were put on pigs, they monitored and wirelessly transmit pressure data from 50 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit continuously. And I was drawn to this one because I think it speaks to the not just emerging but future ways to leverage smart technologies in order to make medical devices that serve multiple purposes, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this is both a treatment and a diagnostic and a monitor all in one. And you think about emerging tech like AI And I think this, the narrative on AI is like either ChatGPT or scary sentient robot that takes over the world. There's not a lot of focus on like the nuts and bolts of like how this would be applied in such meaningful ways. But this side of it where you can gain like a ton of accuracy in medical applications and get a better understanding of what's happening in a body in real time. Like that's incredible. And to me, this story illustrates that all the exciting things that are coming down the pipeline there.
Well, and to me, this is something that if and when it's proven out and at scale, this could just be a feature of contacts.
Of any contacts. Yeah.
Like
I mean,
I hate to say like smart contacts, but contacts of the future would have this sort of built-in technology, and not just for glaucoma testing, but for many other things, like where coupling AI with the readings that it takes from your eye, being able to do a lot of preventative maintenance on your body. No, I saw this one, and there was the other story that we ran this week about how AI will play in terms of how X-rays are read, and just catching other potential red flags, because an X-ray is read by a single doctor, with quite a body of knowledge. But like when you pool that, and maybe you give them an assist with AI helping show some red flags, I don't know. I think it's going to be an incredible future in terms of the power of diagnostics and catching things early.
Yeah.
And having someone in the family with glaucoma, just or intense eye pressure, it just sounds miserable. Oh. It's just absolutely miserable. And it's like, what did you do today? Oh, I had surgery. Why? To relieve the pressure on my eyes. And just imagining how that happens is nah. Jeff, what'd you think about the contact lens 4.0?
Yeah, I mean, you guys have hit a lot of the high points. This is definitely the story this week that qualifies for the thing that leads to the thing description.
It does.
Because immediately where I went with this, in terms of being able to, again, like you guys mentioned, getting ahead of everything and collecting all this data, first of all, the first place I went was my daughter who struggles with migraine headaches. So if we can start collecting data and then saying these were the environmental factors, or this is how her body was operating before, we can identify some of those triggers more effectively than we are right now. Just very similar to what this contact lens is doing. So, maybe at some point she's wearing earrings to collect that data and then transmit it to an app on her phone so she can see these things are spiking, get ahead of it now, whatever the case may be. So, yeah, this medical stuff is amazing. And I saw the article, too, on the AI with the X-rays. And I think just more expertise that you can bring to any of that type of stuff to prevent misdiagnosis, or again, just finally using all of this data that we have available to us and using some sort of, whether it's an algorithm or machine learning or whatever you want to call it, to parse it so that it's more digestible so we can make better decisions is a win all the way around.
Yeah, and as long as it stays a tool, right? As long as this stays a digital tool and not the final answer, perfectly cool with it.
Right.
Jeff, what is your final thought this week?
Well, I'm going to go with in case you missed it first.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
Okay. Can we do that?
Yeah, no.
Change it up or?
No, I want to know your final thought first. Okay. I'm all in now. What's your in case you missed it?
So I picked an article that said Airbus is staying humble even as Boeing flounders, and there's a reason for that. So I thought this was interesting. So the article goes into and talks about how Airbus has outpaced Boeing for 5 straight years. I didn't realize it was that long, but for 5 years in orders and deliveries, and it just reported a 28% quarterly increase in net profit. That's profit. And we're talking about aerospace where they have these billion-dollar deals. I mean, that's incredible. And it was already winning market share by beating Boeing to develop a line of fuel-efficient, mid-sized aircraft that are actually cheaper for airlines. In addition to that, they've got an 8,600 order backlog.
Yeah.
Now, so Airbus is killing it. Boeing, not so much.
Last month they sold 7 planes.
They've still got a backlog, though, of 5,600 planes. So people have purchased over 14,000 planes that are not anywhere near starting to be produced. So when I'm looking through this, and the article also goes on to detail a lot of the issues that Boeing is having. But again, Airbus is staying humble because they can't make stuff fast enough.
Yeah.
The way the supply chain is set up, how long it takes to actually create a plane and do it right, they're not going to go out there and just start snagging a bunch of customers away from Boeing because what's the point? I
what can they give them?
How big of a backlog do you want?
Yeah.
And what this said to me, and looking at all this information, because I found Airbus really, really intriguing as far as how they've been able to grow and just be super steady and incredibly continue that uptick in business, are we at a point now where there's room for a third sort of plane maker?
Absolutely.
And because somebody has to look at this and see Boeing going the other way and struggling. Airbus got more business than they can handle right now. Does somebody want to step up? Sikorsky, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman. I mean, a lot of these companies, they have not built passenger planes, but man, they've built stuff that's very, very similar. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, and the article talks about this too, they're not really making airplanes, they're assembling them, if that makes sense, because you're working with a number of suppliers out there who have specialties in fuselages and the wiring and everything else that goes into putting it all together. That's what Airbus and Boeing do.
Yeah.
It just feels like there is an opportunity, and granted, it would be a big risk and a big swing because you're re-outfitting your whole production scheme to be able to do this, but it just seems like it's waiting there for someone who wants to get into passenger aircraft to do so. And the other thing it made me think about is a book that I've talked about on this on the podcast before, how during World War II, Ford, of all people, transitioned from making cars to making bombers.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that was 80 years ago and it was a lot different.
Yeah.
But if we had the ability to amend processes and make room to go in that type of transition, to take automotive designers and manufacturers to making planes, there's somebody who's making fighter jets who could transition to passenger jets.
Yeah. And maybe there'll be a little more incentive as you have a couple of other startups kind of nibbling away at some of that defense contract money that's out there. Yeah. And maybe not in case you missed it, but like this could have been like you could have guessed it for this week, just in terms of Airbus doing well, Boeing floundering.
Yeah.
But maybe like you missed the part where they're at least being humble about it.
Yeah. I mean, that's just smart business move, I guess, is just kind of keeping your mouth shut, keep your head down. But you make some great points. And David, too, your thought about like as these startups kind of take a piece of the defense market, do these plane makers decide that there's an opportunity there in the commercial side? That is such a big outlay of cash and risk and stuff. I don't know that anyone ever does it, but I mean, I agree. I think there's always been room for a third plane maker for passenger, but I mean, 2 is not enough in my opinion, just for my own like safety and security, due diligence, checks and balances perspective. But I don't know. That would be a big ask of somebody, I think, to move into that sector. Maybe now's the time. I don't know.
But I mean, looking at it, maybe with a big lens, looking at the success that SpaceX and Tesla has had in cracking into markets that other people said couldn't be cracked.
Yeah.
I mean, that could maybe give people enough confidence to flirt with it anyways.
Potentially, yeah.
Like Elon Musk. He's gonna do it.
Please don't.
Musk planes.
Please don't.
All right. For my, in case you missed it this week, I picked a story that came out about an autonomous drone flying using AI based on animal brains.
I feel like whatever you choose for your in case you missed it is just like a word salad of like autonomous AI drone. Sometimes like eVTOL is in there or something.
Yeah, brains, humanoid.
Yeah.
Humanoid's definitely in there. No, this one is incredible. But, I mean, it does tie a lot of things that I really enjoy, right, in terms of biomimicry in particular. So researchers at Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands have developed a drone that flies autonomously. Nothing big about that. But drones, this one in particular, uses neuromorphic image processing and control based on the workings of animal brains. Animal brains use less data and energy than current deep neural networks running on GPUs, or graphic processing chips. Neuromorphic processors are, therefore, really good for small drones because they don't need heavy and large hardware and batteries to do all the processing.
During flight, the drone's deep neural network processes data up to 64 times faster, consumes 3 times less energy than running on a GPU. Now, further developments of this technology could mean that not just a potential leap for drones, but small, agile, and smart drones that are as smart as flying insects or birds. I thought this was a great continuation from previous, in case you missed it, because I recently talked about how one of the big problems with AI is we don't have the processing power out there, right? We don't have enough chips out there for the power-hungry demands of these AI applications. But using biomimicry, looking at sort of how simply and elegantly some animal brains work, people were just like, well, how's that doing it with, a tiny little brain?
Yeah.
Cracking that code and tying it together with AI. I don't know. I just think it's incredible. And the fact that the drone is flying and working more efficiently, it's just really encouraging. And I just find it so inspiring, some of this work that's coming out where somebody was like, all right, hear me out. We're going to hack that animal's brain. We're going to stick it in there. And we're going to use it to fly that. And someone was just like, all right, let's try it.
Let's try it.
And it worked. So, Anna, if anything, if you saw this article come out on our site today and just like knew instinctually that this was going to be mine, in case you missed it, what'd you think of this the story?
It's definitely interesting. My favorite part is the expression that animal brains use less data. That's just like the nicest way of calling an animal dumb.
Yeah, just it's a little simpler.
It's very nice, but
yeah, simpler than like a drone swarm.
Yeah, using a little bit less data. If you know what I mean. You don't always think of animals as having like a traditional intelligence, more of like an instinct. Mm-hmm. So that's the part that I'm really interested to see how they figured that out and leverage it for technology, because like, how do you create a drone with instincts?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
slippery slope.
I know. I know. I agree that the biomimicry is very interesting to observe just from a development side. I'm not sure I see this, but I would like to see what happens.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You mean you can't see the tiny autonomous nano drones that can just heal you from the inside?
Yeah, like they're just like, but we made it into like a hummingbird.
Yeah.
Like just like okay. I don't know. Maybe.
Jeff, your thoughts on the animal brain drone?
I think we're so focused on this AI term right now.
Yeah.
And what this really is in a really advanced form of machine learning, which I understand is within the counter set of artificial intelligence. I get that. But really what we're doing here is we're teaching a machine how to see things the way a bird does. Mm-hmm. It's not a bird. And I think that's an important distinction to make, because a shameless plug here for the Security Breach podcast, we were just talking to a guy about AI, and one of his biggest concerns is using AI to the point where we forget the organic human knowledge and understanding of just managing something, doing something, as opposed to just focusing on the result.
Right.
And in this instance, I think that's where you could become overly confident on this type of technology and thinking you're plugging in and it's going to fly like a bird. It's not. It can't. It doesn't have that, like Anna was talking about, that instinct or whatever you want to say. It's an incredible advancement. And anytime we can do this type of stuff, more energy efficient, faster, that's incredible. And I know we put a lot of these terms on this stuff to make it sexier and get people to really pay attention, because it is important to look at these advancements, because this is another thing that could lead to the thing type of story. I mean, where this could go is incredible, because it is more than just saying, this is a tree, don't fly into it. Okay. It's more advanced than that. So it's an incredible first step. I just want to be careful with some of the terminology we use sometime with this.
Well, and so it's not that you're dropping a bird brain into a drone, right? It's how an animal brain processes the data, right? And I think that is the important part of this, because you're right. It's basically, AI learns based off of how we teach it, the models we teach it. And if we teach it how to do it more efficiently, like an animal or a human, that's just going to improve it. But I mean, you're right. Like, you're right. Like AI is just machine learning and big data.
And then they're just like, no, it's AI now. Yeah. And it's like, well, what about Industry 2.0? No.
Everything's AI
It's
now.
AI.
Everything's
It's
AI.
AI.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's IoT enabled. It is not. It's AI based. It's just like, all right.
Yeah.
We're going to move more units if it's based AI based. Well, before we get out of here, now we'll do final thoughts. Anna, what's your final thought this week?
It was my husband's birthday this week, and my kids are still young enough where they like to make dad gifts and then like wrap up the stuff that I bought and give it to him. Oh, yeah. Which is hilarious because it's always like you can just see the disappointment on their faces when he opens it and they're like, that's what I gave dad. But WeatherTech mats, not anyone's favorite.
Oh, no?
No, and like as a...
I'd get excited.
Well, that's what I mean. Like as an adult, I don't know what age at which WeatherTech mats go from being like the worst thing on earth that you could ever imagine to being like, this is the best.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Like
finally, thank you.
This is what's been missing in my life. There's got to be, I don't know if it's like a gradient or if it's like a pivot at a certain age, but the kids are not there. They were not into that at all. But my husband was, so.
Well, yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. My final thought this week is that, at the new house, we're giving yet another attempt at trying landscaping, just a little novice amateur landscaping and
not worth it.
Trying to grow grass. And there are just some things in life that seem so easy. You know what? You give me the little foam cup with a little bit of dirt in it and a little bit of grass seed. I can grow grass as like part of a science experiment at home. But man, it's just so difficult when it comes to growing grass in your yard.
Where you want it.
Yeah, where you want it. And then not getting your dog and children to immediately walk through it, not having it like ravaged by like an incredibly scary amount of birds. And but I mean I'm trying again. Like so there are just 3 patches in the house, right? Right when we bought the house, they recently redid the roof and the gutters, and they like built this drain that goes underground and like kind of goes into the sewage. And that path that they had to dig up for that was just, pretty much gravel. Like, so just, I had 2 yards of dirt delivered because you can't just get 1 yard delivered. It turns out that's a significant amount of dirt.
You got some extra dirt.
You got to find. Well, no, we found some spots for it. So put the dirt down, and then the seed, and then the more dirt, and then just the raking and the constant watering it. I'm following all 3 directions on the back of the bag. I'm just like, yep, I prepared the spot, and then I put the seed down, and then I watered it. Yep, and then I look at it, and I'm like, where's the grass? So I just want to, take my final thought to just thank the landscapers out there. And if you have any recommendations in the Midwest, I'm likely going to need them because we had where they put that drainage in, they had recently, or maybe not recently, when they built a shed in the back, they just never kind of filled in what they dug out to put the shed there. So we just kind of filled in around there. And then we have like a little retaining wall that between the kids and dog playing on it, had just look, the rocks are starting to get a little loose. So I just wanted to mound it up a little bit more, keep things tight. Oh my God.
I got some stuff for you.
Yeah.
So first of all, dirt is not good enough. You need topsoil.
Okay. No. So there was like 3 grades. There were 3 grades. I had the second grade because I asked her. She's like, no, you shouldn't need topsoil for that project.
Yeah, we have too much sand in the dirt around here.
Yeah.
Regardless of where you are. So you need topsoil. The other thing is you're going to have to do it at least 3 times. Because that's what I've seen. And what I usually do in the spring, you put down the seed and you just hope for something to happen over the summer.
Yeah.
In the fall, you put down that patching stuff.
Okay.
That looks like insulation type stuff.
Yeah.
Put that down, and then again in the spring. By then, it usually starts growing.
And then maybe some grass. Oh my goodness!
And I think the biggest thing that I always laugh at is when they say this bag is good enough for an area so large. I'm like, no, it's not.
No, it's just
no.
I like.
I'm gonna put down that entire bag on like 10 square feet and hope for something.
True. And Des was out helping me water it and stuff, and he's just like, by the time I got to the 3rd patch, so I did the gutter and then I did the retaining wall and then I was going around the shed, and he's just like, what are you doing, Dad? I'm like, I'm just spinning my wheels, man. I'm not doing anything. I'm making the only positive thing that has come from this entire thing is that our water table that became a sand table is now a mud table.
Ooh, fun.
It is the just the coolest thing in the entire neighborhood. They're just like, wait a second, we're just gonna put water in this and make mud and then paint everything with it. I'm like,
or drive your trucks through it.
Go
That's
for
awesome.
it. Yeah. So at least we got a good, pretty sound mud table right now.
Also, if you don't care how it looks for that retaining wall, hostas grow everywhere.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind a big weird looking bush coming out the side of your wall, it would keep it together.
Yeah, no, that's I'm down. I'm ready to just like rip that out and then just put a full brick wall right there. Just because I get the decorative touch, the flourishes of the rocks, but it's like, no, I'm going to put concrete between all of these. It's a work in progress.
There you go.
Jeff, what's your final thought this week?
So, as you guys are aware, I'm going fishing next week. Unfortunately, I won't be here, but I will be enjoying myself there. And in getting ready for this is a little bit more, a little bit next level type of fishing. So I had to buy some stuff. And as I'm doing this, you sort of have those options. And what I found is there's no middle. It's either you're going with something low or high.
Yeah.
And kind of thought of a lot of the stuff we talk about here when it comes to making those investments. So I did go with maybe the more expensive rain gear, life jacket, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to thank my wife for understanding that when I told her how much this trip was going to cost, it's a little more.
Left out those costs.
And I haven't bought beer yet. So it's going to be a little bit more.
Well, you'll bring back a ton of fish to stock the freezer.
Yeah.
And that'll bring, costs on.
It's your
help
ROI.
You realize the ROI.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
How many trips, you just got to figure out how many trips you need to take in order to break even, right?
There you go.
All right. Well, no, we'll miss you next week, and good luck out there.
Thanks.
All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You could also subscribe to our daily newsletter. Make sure you get it delivered to your inbox first, and subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine so you can join us every Thursday when we go live. For Jeff Reinke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manty. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast, and we will see you next week.